Welcome to Magic Arcanum. I'm Ryan Gomez. Behind the scenes is Nicole Letson, and we're so glad you're here because it's spooky story time. That's right, October is a big deal for us here at Arcanum. We are celebrating our 1-year anniversary as an independent channel, and we've been having some Halloween fun with a look at zombies and even a guest appearance by Doctor Strange. For today, the frights continue as we rank all of the legendary vampires in Magic by their lore score. And what is that, you ask? Well, each vampire can earn up to 10 points in 4 different categories. The first is legendary, which measures how much of an impact this character had on the Magic story. Were they truly legendary? Do they deserve to have a legendary creature card? O is for otherworldly. Does this character have something about them that is unique and special while still fitting in with the overall feel and style of the multiverse? R is for reflection. Does the card or cards in question reflect how the character acts in the story? Just want to point out, this is a change from how it worked in the previous 2 episodes. Characters with more than 1 card will now only be scored once, but having multiple cards will almost certainly help your reflection score, especially if those cards depict your character at very different points in time. And E is our extra category. Now, for the vampires, Nicole suggested using E for everlasting. How well does this vampire make use of their immortality and position of power? Nicole also helped resolve our tiebreakers. So as always, if you have a problem with how this list shakes out, you should become a patron so you can send us a direct message on our exclusive Discord. Just make sure you send the message to Nicole. I'm not going to read it. I'm too busy trying to regrow my mustache. Okay, let's take a look at the legendary vampires of Magic ranked by lore. In absolute undead last place, we find the Haunt of Hightower with the first ever single-digit lore score at just 7 points. Haunt was the buy a box promo and has nothing to do with the story on Ravnica, so it's hard to tell if the abilities match up, but it does at least resemble some of the other vampires that are unique to this plane. Angie Falconwrath comes next. She was created for Commander and has not appeared in the story yet, although that could change next year when we get the Innistrad set focused on vampires. Angie is described as crazy and ruthless even by her own family's standards, and right now she is rounding up a hunting pack of other vampires touched by Emrakul's influence in the hopes of retaking her ancestral home. It's currently a monastery for the Church of Avacyn. Good luck, Angie! 27th place goes to Garza Zol, who ruled a portion of Dominaria during the Ice Age. Now, the most interesting thing about her is whenever a creature she deals damage to dies, she gets a +1/+1 counter, and that is a mechanic we can trace all the way back to the early days of Magic design. Keep an eye out for how often that appears on our list, and see if you can tell what else those vampires have in common. Over on Ravnica, again, we find Mirko Vosk in 26th place, which is a better rank than he got running the Implicit Maze. Mirko was the guild champion for House Demir until Lazav decided he wanted to take care of things himself, so the poor mind drinker earned a DNF on that race. Zagreus comes next, and we don't know a whole lot about him other than he is currently serving as the top lieutenant to the last remaining Blood Chief on Zendikar in the hopes that he will earn himself a promotion. Vampires on Zendikar work a little differently than most other planes. They can all trace their lineage back to Ulamog's influence and a small group of original Blood Chiefs. With the Eldrazi vanquished from the plane, only a Blood Chief can now create more vampires, but nobody knows how to create more Blood Chiefs yet, so that is the secret Zagreus is hoping to unlock. Jaleva is in 24th. She is a loner on Innistrad who preys on wizards especially. She enjoys consuming her target's knowledge as much as their blood, and there is a bounty on her head from the Church of Avacyn, but so far, nobody has been able to claim it. Jumping back to Zendikar, we find one of those first Blood Chiefs I had mentioned with Rayami. It's unclear how long after being created Rayami survived, but since we know there is only one blood chief on the plane now, we can conclude Rayami is no more. In 22nd place, we find Vito, a vampire from Ixalan, although he appeared in a core set. Vito was a strong believer that the immortal sun would offer his kind salvation, and he did not take the news well when Elenda told him he should focus on humility rather than an artifact that isn't even on the plane anymore. For anyone who missed the Ixalan story, the immortal sun was a powerful artifact desired by many different groups on the plane, but it was taken off-world by Tezzeret. And I suspect our next visit to Ixalan will show each group adjusting to life without the relic, especially the vampires. Next we come to Arvad the Cursed, a Benelish knight turned vampire by Kazarov. Arvad now manages security for the new Weatherlight, where he keeps his darker impulses in check with influence from Sarah's realm, which is contained in the ship's power stones. Up next is Anawan in 20th place. He was a renowned scholar on Zendikar with a bit of a dark side, and he was searching for clues to the whereabouts of the Eye of Ugin before Chandra showed up holding the actual map. Long story short, you could say he is at least partly responsible for the release of the Eldrazi on the plane, but he has been trying to make up for it since then. Recently, he helped a party of adventurers kill Grakmaw, the fearsome Hydra who had been living in one of the Skyclaves. I've got Mathis next in 19th place, mostly thanks to his strong reflection score. We don't know what plane he's from, but we do know he is obsessed with killing all of the other vampires there in hopes of being the last one left. Which doesn't make a ton of sense to me, because usually a vampire feeding on someone turns them into a vampire as well. So is his goal to be the only one creating more vampires? I guess so. Anyway, Lisha comes next, and we don't know her home plane either, but we do know she carries 2 swords dripping with blood and has the feathers of a fallen angel stuck in her helmet as a symbol of her supremacy. While she hasn't appeared in the story yet, you have to admit a vampire decked out in Roman-inspired armor is pretty otherworldly, and I am looking forward to learning more about whatever's going on here. Miri the Cursed claims 17th place with her appearance in Planar Chaos. Now, this is a hard one to score because this is an alternate timeline and the story never really happened, but the card does seem like a good reflection of what a vampire Miri would be like, and that alone makes it at least 10 times better than the Haunt of Hightower. 16 goes to Etrata, and watch out, Ash Ketchum, because she wants to be the very best, like no one ever was. She has plans to kill Lizav someday, but she doesn't really care about House Demir or even her home plane of Ravnica. She just wants to be the best spy left standing, and I think her card captures that pretty well. That brings us to 15th place and the middle of our list, which feels like the right place for Edgar Markov. Edgar is the grandfather of Sorin and is the source of all vampires on Innistrad. That certainly justifies his legendary status, but he hasn't actually appeared in any of the stories yet. It's not even clear if he's alive or dead at the moment. My personal prediction is we will see him again next year in the Innistrad set focused on vampires. I actually think he's the one who got Sorin out of that wall, and he's going to hold that over him as leverage, maybe to force a marriage with a stronger house. Anyway, Edgar has 5s in every category because he could end up being really important, but it depends how they want to use him in the story, so we'll just have to wait and see. Vish Kal edges out Edgar slightly, mostly thanks to his otherworldly and reflection scores, and the fact that Nicole says he is, quote, basically Batman. We don't know his home plane, but we do know he feeds on wicked individuals as judged by his own code of ethics and morals. Anyone he deems okay becomes basically untouchable, while others get the full judge, jury, executioner experience. And I think his card captures both sides of that pretty well. Elenda the Dusk Rose is in 13th place. She was the first vampire on Ixalan and believed it was her duty to protect the immortal sun. She locked herself away for thousands of years and then emerged to find that the gift of immortality she had left her people was being used for conquest rather than protection. As I mentioned earlier, things on Ixalan are about to go through a radical shift, and Elenda will be a key player going forward as the vampires hear her message of humility and compassion. Kazarov is next, who sired Arvad, as you might remember me saying. He's also got that ability to gain counters when a creature he damages dies, and that is something that I promise will make more sense when we get higher up in the list. In 11th place, we find Mavrin Fiend, another vampire from Ixalan. He watched Elenda chase the immortal sun, but waited centuries before following her, and he used that time to become a high-ranking member of the Legion of Dusk. He was present for more of the story than Elenda, and he used his everlasting life to achieve more than just sitting in a tomb, which is why he scores a little higher than her, even though she's the more significant figure on the plane. Now we are entering the top 10 vampires Magic has to offer. You will notice many of them have multiple cards or are connected to events going all the way back to the earliest days of the game. Indeed, these are powerful and memorable characters, but only one can claim the Golden Mustache. So sharpen your fangs and let's find out who's the top blood drinker. In 10th place, we find the daughter of a dwarven king, Irene Sengir. But Ryan, she doesn't look like a dwarf, so what's the deal? Well, I will get to that in a moment, but for now I can tell you she has spent the last several thousand years gradually changing her own appearance so that she no longer resembles her true heritage. Number 9 is an ancient Dominarian vampire known as Shaku Endbringer. Kaervek approached her looking for an alliance during the Mirage War, but she declined, instead preferring to remain distant and surrounded by her loyal followers. She's quoted in the flavor text of the original vampiric tutor, and referenced on about a dozen other cards, which makes her an iconic part of Magic's early days. 8th place goes to Yahenni, one of the Aetherborn of Kaladesh. Yahenni was a huge help to the Gatewatch as they joined Chandra's mother in resisting the corrupted consulate, but it was Yahenni's death rather than their life that had the biggest impact on the story. For anyone who missed Kaladesh, the Aetherborn are created as a byproduct of harvesting Aether, the energy source of the plane. They are unstable and know from the moment of their birth how long they have until their body will crumble apart and they will die. Now, normally there is nothing they can do to prevent this, but some Aetherborn have vampiric abilities that allow them to drain the life force out of someone else to extend their own clock. Now, this is, almost in every case, an evil thing to do. Robbing someone else of their life to extend your own is not acceptable in a civil society, right? So Yahenni only used their power to fight the bad guys, the consulate, and once that was done, they accepted it was their time to pass on and refused to drain the life from anyone else. As a deathbed gift, Nissa told Yahenni about the other planes in the multiverse. She explained how they're all connected by the very aether from which Yahenni was made. Yahenni died knowing that they were part of something bigger than just Kaladesh. It was a very beautiful moment in the story and helped make Nissa one of my favorite characters. But we're not here to talk about elves. Let's get back to the vampires. Vona comes next in 7th place. She's one of Ixalan's more aggressive vampires, leading armies to victory for like 400 years. That is great for her E-score, and she was present in the story, interacting with Vraska and Huatli as they all searched for the immortal sun. Vona then disagreed with Elenda about the role of the vampires in a world without the immortal sun before she was scolded by Mavrin Fiend for speaking ill to the living saint. And after that, I think Vona was eaten by a dinosaur or something. I don't really remember. Anyway, Kalitas comes next. He was a blood chief on Zendikar, but member of one of the weaker families. In his desperate quest for power, he turned his own family into Eldrazi thralls, and then attempted to do the same to the surrounding vampires before he was stopped by Draena. Kalitas, has 2 cards, and they show a significant change. His first one creates vampire tokens, because he was a blood chief, and that's what they do. But his second card shows him after he was branded a traitor by his own people, and he now makes zombie tokens. And on Zendikar, zombies, or nulls, are failed vampires. So I just thought that was an interesting bit of storytelling through mechanics. Kalitas is presumed to be dead now, by the way, since we know there's only one blood chief left on the plane, and, spoiler, he ain't it. Starting our top 5, we find Olivia Voldaren, matriarch of the Voldaren bloodline on Innistrad. She was especially reclusive, preferring to live in the more remote areas of the plane, but she was also known for hosting the best parties, and other vampires would eagerly cross the great distances just to be in attendance. Her isolated nature also helped her to avoid most of Emrakul's influence during the Shadows over Innistrad, so Sorin came to her hoping to forge an alliance against the invaders. She demanded that he destroy Avacyn first, which he kinda had to do anyway because she went mad, but that is a story for another time. Anyway, Olivia and Sorin stood together as they faced Nahiri. Ultimately, as we know, Nahiri got the upper hand and managed to partially seal Sorin inside a ruined bit of wall. Olivia took that opportunity to pick up his sword and claim the title Lord of Innistrad. Now, we know Sorin got out of that wall, but we don't know what's been happening on Innistrad since. I suspect we'll see Olivia again in the vampire set promised for next year, and I think she'll be hosting a wedding, maybe even her own. In 4th place, we find Krovax the Cursed. He was a member of the original Weatherlight before succumbing to Phyrexian influence and eventually becoming Evencar, or ruler, of the Stronghold. He was especially vicious as Evencar, not only draining his victims, but then eating their remains. He also kept vampire hounds around as pets, and I only bring them up because I remember my brother killing me with these guys so many times when we were first learning magic together way back in the day. I mean, it's a happy memory, but my best card was Pegasus Stampede. Yeah, we both had Exodus themed decks to start, and you know what? I'm getting away from the vampires again, I'm sorry. 3rd place, Draena. She came from the same neighborhood as Kalitas, but was part of a more powerful and rich house. She was able to resist him turning everybody into Eldrazi thralls, making her the liberator of Malakir. From there, she allied with Gideon and Tazri and helped fight against the Eldrazi during the Battle for Zendikar. When the dust settled, she was the last surviving blood chief on the plane, and now she's working with Zagreus to find new methods of growing the vampire family tree. In 2nd place, we find Zadak, Lord of Secrets and founder of House Dimir on Ravnica. For 10,000 years, he hid in the shadows of the plane, manipulating things and waiting for his time to strike. His actions were the foundation for the first Ravnica block, and even now that he's dead, his spirit might still be communicating with Lazav and continuing to influence plans for the guild. It's gonna be tough to beat someone who made such excellent use of their everlasting power, but there is one vampire out there who can do it. That would be Baron Sengir, the game's first true legendary vampire, and one who has made his presence felt across time and space. Sengir is from Dominaria, but is such a dark and evil force, planeswalkers would summon him to fight on their behalf on other planes. I should point out, this is different from how it works today. Planeswalkers only summon replicas of their allies, but back when I was losing to vampire hounds, you would drag the actual character to your battlefield wherever it was. And that is how Sengir got himself stuck on Olgratha of Homelands fame. You know all those jokes about how much Homelands sucks as a set? Well, that's because it's home to the game's best vampire. Anyway, after setting up shop, Sengir was repeatedly attacked by the plane's dwarves, and he figured the best way to stop them from coming back was to take the Dwarven King's daughter and turn her into his own trophy. Yeah, that's Irene from 10th place. He adopted her as his own, and she changed her appearance to better suit him. That's one of those creepy early Magic things they probably hope nobody really remembers. You'll also notice the OG Sengir gets counters placed on him whenever a creature he damaged dies, and that is a recurring thing we see on the vampires from Dominaria, where he was the father to, like, all of them. Nobody does it better than him, though. He used to get a +2/+2 counter, but since those aren't a thing anymore, his new card in Commander Legends gets 2 +1/+1 counters as a sort of throwback. So, good legendary score, and he's had a ripple effect across Dominaria and countless other planes, with cards still bearing his name. He also looks quite otherworldly, without getting too far away from familiar vampire territory. And reflection? Well, as we've seen, he has been the template on which dozens of other vampires were based, making him the father to the tribe mechanically as much as he was in the story. What about that crucial E score? I think he is truly everlasting. He has children on multiple planes still carrying out his will, and he has been hard at work on Olgratha for a long time, converting the locals to suit his needs. He is patient, methodical, suave, and deadly. He could be a threat to the entire multiverse, but he is off the radar of the Gatewatch and even Ugin. And he flies! Did you notice how many vampires don't fly? Nicole felt strongly that they should all fly, but it seems to be pretty rare. Baron Sengir, I award you the prestigious Golden Mustache and declare you to be first among your kind when ranked by L.O.R.E. What do you think? Is there a different blood drinker you would have crowned top bat? Let me know down in the comments, and then make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the great stories you'll only find here on Magic Arcanum. Happy Halloween!